Joining us from London via Skype is Gerard Lyons, Chief Economic Advisor to London Mayor Boris Johnson, and author of the UK Referendum, an easy guide to leaving the EU. To lead the conversation, please welcome back Steve Clemons.
I'm here with all of you, and we're going to have some fun. Gerald, are you with us? Or Gerard, are you with us?
Yeah.
Hey, how are you? Were you in Bratislava last week?
No.
No, okay, never mind. That was not a good opening question, but I thought I saw you on a schedule that I was there for. So Jason Furman, our chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors down the street at the White House, said that he hasn't seen a single serious piece of economic research that shows that a Brexit would be good for the UK on any front. So your thoughts in response?
Well, I could actually fill up his inbox on his email quite easily with a number of important pieces of work done on this. It has to be said that many of the official organisations, the International Monetary Fund, the OECD, etc., they're very much against Brexit, but they're the same guys. The last time they were in such unison was before the financial crisis, when they said there wouldn't be a financial crisis. There are actually quite a few detailed pieces of work. Indeed, I myself, at City Hall in 2014, 2 years ago, we did a detailed piece of work, took about a year. We had a number of independent outside forecasters contribute to that to make sure it was viewed as politically independent. And they very much looked at the scenario and said that Brexit was good news for the UK economy.
When you think about this politically within Europe, and it's interesting that later today we're going to have the former Greek finance minister here, and he had essentially a gladiatorial battle for some time with Wolfgang Schäuble, the German finance minister. And I'm interested in the tension points and the tectonic divides inside Europe between where the UK is and this broad notion of a two-state Europe. Does it just look too ridiculous from your perspective, and so it's better to cash out and move out? Or do you think if you were to stay in, there are sensible things that can be done inside Europe to decrease the divide between countries like Greece and Germany?
Okay, well, your question touches on a whole host of key issues. For an American audience, let me explain it like this. There are 28 countries within the European Union. I would say 27 of those 28 countries view it primarily from a political perspective, including the Greeks, as you touched on the Greeks.
Right.
Here in the United Kingdom, we tend to look at this primarily from an economic and a financial perspective. But for the other countries who look at it from a political perspective, there's almost no plan B. Now, within the European Union of 28 countries, 19, so the bulk of them, are in the single currency, the euro. And the euro basically doesn't work properly. For the euro to work properly, you need to see it become a political union like the United States of America. The challenge in the euro, which is at the heart of the system, is that economies like Greece, Spain, Portugal are not the same as Germany, and they will never be the same as Germany for many years, if not centuries to come. And the challenge is that all of them are in a single currency block where one size fits all. They need the same currency, they need the same interest rate. And of course, Greece needs a different currency. It needs a much weaker currency than Germany. So the shock absorber for the Greek economy has been rampantly high rates of unemployment. And the challenge in the Eurozone, as well as the European Union, is that the European Union never addresses its big problems. It never addresses youth unemployment. For instance, 1 in 2 young people in Greece are unemployed, 1 in 4 young people in Spain and Portugal are unemployed. It never addresses the mass migration problem, and in your question, it never addresses the depression in Greece. So when we sit here in the United Kingdom, one needs to weigh up the economic as well as the political advantages of being in the EU versus the economic and the political gains from being outside.
Boris Johnson, whom you advised, took real exception to President Obama's visit and comments on the consequences of Brexit. And, he threw some names into that as well. Do you think it was inappropriate for world leaders to comment on what they're concerned about one way or the other, whether they're for or against Brexit?
Well, I think everyone is entitled to their viewpoint. What it was felt here was that many people felt it was inappropriate for the president to intervene so forcefully in our key current domestic political issue. Clearly, that was the essence of it. Indeed, it seems to have backfired slightly in that according to opinion polls, and I think you, as well as us, know that you can't always trust opinion polls, but the initial opinion polls after last weekend's visit suggest that the majority of British people thought he shouldn't have intervened so much. But I think it's important to stress that good economics is good politics, but the issue here is primarily a political one. It's about the ability to control your own destiny, and it's about the ability to be able to pull the levers that control your own economy as well. But the European Union has a democratic deficit. That's why there is such a growth of extremist parties across many different countries across the European Union. Here in the United Kingdom, the argument is that we should have Parliament, the UK Parliament in Westminster, deciding what goes on. And your previous president, President George W. Bush, said, who do you ring in Europe? Who do you ring when something goes wrong? And the challenge is that more and more political power is being ceded to Brussels. So it's a political issue. But at the same time, in economic terms, the report I did for the Mayor a couple of years ago, and other people have done similar reports, suggests that it's not just about, in economic terms, being in or out. It's what you do if you're in, and it's also what you do if you're out. And in an ideal world, a European Union that was truly, truly reformed in economic terms would do really well. But the European Union doesn't reform. So the choice we have in the UK in economic terms is remaining in an unreformed European Union versus being outside and becoming truly global, making sure that we actually position ourselves in the changing and growing global economy.
Gerard, I just want to say you look really great. This Skype thing is working.
Good.
I thought it might be, Fred, but you look really great. Let me do something we sometimes do at the Atlantic, and you've been such a compelling and forceful advocate of Brexit across a lot of things. Sometimes it's useful for advocates to put themselves in the shoes of their opponents. What do you think are the best arguments that your opponents make that have some merit, that when you're up at night and thinking and say, wow, there is a good point that the opposition has made, so not to show your hand too much, but where do you think some of your opponents have it right?
Well, the main argument, the Remain side, here in the UK, it's a choice between remain in the European Union or leave. And the Leave side is called the Brexit side.
Right.
In terms of the Remain side, their main argument is that because the European Union is huge, 500 million people, we should stay in it. To that, I would say it's like the Titanic. People wanted to be on the Titanic when it set sail from Southampton to New York because it was huge. But the Titanic didn't change direction, even though it was in the face of impending disaster, and it sank. And the European Union is like that. But the other argument...
And you think that's their best argument?
Well, yes, unfortunately they do. The other argument, they might not quite use the same analogy as me. The other argument they do use, and this was evident last week, the UK government came out with a report, is that the European Union will reform. We all keep thinking about the European Union reforming, but it's almost like a virtual reality world. The Remain side talk about the European Union as they would like it to be, not as it is at the moment. Well, admittedly, some people on the Brexit side talk about the UK leaving and the next day it being hunky-dory, wonderful, fantastic. The reality is that the Remain side have to address the fact that the European Union seems unwilling to address reform. And what that means, in essence, is that the tail wags the dog. If you think of Europe as a subset of Europe, we have the European Union, 28 countries. As a further subset, we have the Eurozone, those current countries that have the euro as their currency. There's 19 of them. Because the euro involving Greece, Spain, Portugal, Ireland, as well as Germany, Holland, etc., are such a disparate group of countries, they need to work even harder to keep it together. That means they've got to become a political union. So it's like the tail wags the dog. The Eurozone tail wags the European Union dog. So if the UK actually votes to remain in, I think they would have called our bluff. They would see that we in the UK complain about it and don't really do much about it. Now, the Remain side would argue, of course, if we stay in, we can suddenly remain a big force to push through change. But you should be aware in America that over the last year, ahead of this referendum, the UK Prime Minister basically argued for reform. Perhaps he didn't argue it as well as he should have done. I don't think he did. But the rest of the EU seemed unwilling to play ball. And instead of viewing this as an opportunity at a time when the European Union, relative to other regions of the world, is growing slowly. They didn't seize this as an opportunity to reform. So I think the Remain side keeps talking about a European Union as they would like it to be, whereas in life you need to deal with the reality of the situation.
I want to go to the audience and get a couple of quick questions in a moment, but let me ask you a strategic and national security element.
Yeah.
If Boris Johnson were the Prime Minister of the UK in the future and there was a national security threat somewhere, could you imagine after Brexit, after you've had this separation, seeing op-eds jointly authored by Boris Johnson, the President of the United States, and the French President, which is what Obama did with David Cameron and the French president before? Do your strategic ties and national security ties with Europe become weaker along with an economic distancing?
Well, I don't think they change. I would say 2 points. First, in terms of politicians, I think we all know that we should judge them by what they do, not just by what they say. And politicians, whether it's your president, other leaders within the European Union, may say they don't want Britain to Brexit. But if Britain was to exercise its democratic right and decide to leave, then the reality is, whether it's President Obama or whoever's president next year, they would actually deal with the situation. You actually take what other countries do and you move on. And that leads on to the second point. In terms of national security, the UK is half of the defence capability of the European Union. It's half of the military expenditure, so to speak, in terms of expeditionary force of the European Union. So the European Union loses a very key part of their military capability if the UK were to leave. But the reality is that while politically you want to take your own decisions, it's like any of us in life, we want individually to take our own decisions. But we do cooperate with everyone else when we need to. And in military terms, geopolitical terms, we're a member of NATO. We're one of the 5 countries in the United Nations Security Council. So I don't think in geopolitical or military terms it lessens or changes the picture at all.
Fascinating. We have a question in the very back.
Sure. Vlad Antiker of the Berea Group. The question is, what changes do you have to see in the next year that would make you change your opinion and turn you to an advocate of Britain staying in the European Union? What are the reforms that you'd like to see that would change?
So question is basically, before the referendum, can anything change your mind?
Well, the referendum is in 2 months' time, so that question is not going to be answered. But if we go back to last year...
But you still got 2 months to shift, right?
Yeah, well, no, well, we had... the process was that last summer, after the UK had a general election last May, then the Prime Minister basically, or the UK government, embarked on a renegotiation process. It didn't achieve much. But coming back to the gentleman's question, a very minimum thing that we needed was to have a veto for the countries outside the euro over the countries in the euro. What does that mean? Well, there's 28 countries in the European Union. All but 2 of them were obliged at some stage to join the euro. The eurozone, the countries in the eurozone, the tail wags the dog, as I said earlier. They're driving more and more of economic and financial policy. Therefore, we needed to have a veto so that they can't overrule us, even if we as an independent country remained in the EU. We didn't get that. But more particularly, I think if we step back, the European Union needs to have a policy to control migration. It doesn't control its borders. But also, wider than that, the European Union needs to become an innovative economy. If we think, for 43 years, Britain has been in the EU, and many people might think, we've been in it that long, it's not done us too bad. What's really changed in the last decade is that the European Union has moved in the opposite direction. It'd be like all of us here in your room trying to walk the wrong way on an escalator. Basically, globalization, technical change, and innovation have meant that economics almost knows no borders. All of us can interact with someone somewhere else in the world. Businesses can sell anywhere. While that's happening, the European Union has gone in the opposite direction. It's become centralising, controlling, regulating. So coming back to your gentleman's question, it's about ceding more powers back to national parliaments. It's about having an economic policy that's fit for purpose. And you said your Council of Economic Advisors, gentlemen, said no one seriously talked about Brexit being good. I don't know of anyone in any organisation, IMF, World Bank, even the European Commission, who does not predict that the European Union will be the slowest growth region of the world in coming decades. Despite the current bounce, it's like a dead cat bounce. It's the slow growth region. So coming back to the gentleman's question, it's about ceding more power back to national governments, a veto for the non-Eurozone countries. But in economic terms, it's about making the European Union an innovative economy.
Right. Gerard, we're right at the end of our time, but let me just ask you real quickly. If you were the German finance minister, how could you, what would you do to make yourself feel good about what you're advocating?
I would resign if I was him. The German finance minister has a very warped view of economic policy, in my view. He thinks that austerity, deflationary policies work. Within the European Union, Germany and the Netherlands have huge current account surpluses. Basically, let's put it this way, the euro is a very, in economic terms, a pro-cyclical policy. What that means in non-economic terms is that when you're in a hole, it makes you dig deeper. It means that when things are going well or when the fire's burning, you add fuel to the fire. So in the good times, the euro works by encouraging money to go from the centre to the periphery. Hence, it led to the boom and then the bust in Greece, the boom in Spain, Portugal, and in Ireland. In the bad times, the money goes back to the centre. And therefore, in those environments, you need the guys with the big savings, Germany in particular, to spend more. Their view, and the German finance minister policy, is they shouldn't be spending more, everyone else should be spending more, but no one else has any money, so therefore he says we'll spend less. I don't know, it's like the balanced economy paradox is what I say. If all of you people in your room decided to go to the bar after your conference, but when you got to the bar, each of you individually decided for your own personal finances, you were going to keep your hands in your own pockets or in your handbags and not going to take your money out, then none of you would have any money to buy a drink. And within the European Union, the guys who've got the money to buy the drinks are those with the big surpluses in Germany, Holland, etc. But they, led by the German finance minister, don't want to put their hand in the pocket. So for us in Britain, we obviously can't control what they do. We want to control our own destiny in economic, political and financial terms and basically make sure that we're geared into the growth economies of the future in the Indo-Asia Pacific region, America, China, India, etc.
Thank you. I just want to tell everyone in the room with us, if you're with us at 4 o'clock, we're buying the drinks, so you don't need to be worried at the bar. But ladies and gentlemen, great 15 minutes with Gerard Lyons, Chief Economic Advisor to Mayor Boris Johnson in London, and author, for those of you interested in the UK referendum, An Easy Guide to Leaving the EU. Gerard, thank you so much.
Pleasure. Take care.
Ladies